now give us some Lamrim Lamcha, give a chima, no sooner do I literature, one do go about Hadami, go about Tovaji, Tobaji, Tablam, and the Kuvidunga Tada literature, and the Tarpa, Yumova, Savana Jepa, Bombi, Bomba, and Tarbu go about Toyada. The Semja Tamjig Dunda, and the Yumova Jiba Basha, that Jiba Banch, Sanjo Copon to begin, that Tablan give us some Lamrim, Yamlin Rimba, and the day, Mad, and Jachu Lambre, the Somba de Mark, and Jeremy, and the Chikomba, the Jachu Lamrim Jing, says Dinma, all those in a tissue core, and Dinyamlin Jake Tablam, that they are a jig and Jing and Che, the Yashi, the Yambiki. Chui to the chin and not the kind of tuba till the tuba to the Yanangas Nyangore, says that has some of the Digor Mashugorwa.
Good morning. So we're continuing to look at the stages of training for practitioners of varying capacity. Practitioners who are striving to achieve either a good rebirth, closing the possibility to falling to the lower realms, or practitioners who are striving for liberation, or those who are striving to attain full and complete enlightenment. So those who are striving for liberation will be striving to abandon afflictions together with their seeds. That's the goal of those who are striving for liberation. And those who are striving for enlightenment will, whilst striving to abandon the afflictions together with the seeds, will also strive to abandon the imprints in order to become a Buddha, so as to be able to guide all beings to their own liberation. And the text that we are looking at is the middle graduated stages of training for the path of enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa. And this presents the entire and complete and unmistaken method for training one's mind in order to achieve enlightenment. And we are in the second chapter, which is presenting how to listen and explain the teachings. In particular, we in the section, how to listen to the Dharma. Yeah, and it's saying about Dodang, and the Jike, the Jansa, and the Papa to me, Super Jansa, and the Jerap said, Dinan Makarasungor Sene, Dang Zugi, Chen Yembi Gablea, and Che Dang, and Jike, Gang Yegi, Che Dang, Che Son Lama, Rangi Gita, Che, she said Lama, Nyamlen Jeg, Lama Della, and the Jike, Gushap, Devadang, Gushap. And the jig is him to Ningur Chibi Tone, and the Chevo Puya, the Nigi Tone, and Jig, and Yangores, the Gawada, Gawi, some diri, and the Che, the Nishia body, and Bemase, Gawasamboda, Shuji, and Sempigeda, the Nigi Che Delia, and the Dungadru, Tablam, Dungadru, and Digidru, Tab Chasa, the Nigi Che, but Bemase, getting Chembochit, Gasore. Sunam Gawasambuchi, that in a Lama de Negi, Lama Dizania Chu Shuji to Squabra, Bemase Yago Shuji, Sembetan, and also and Gawakumbata, Deni, Deni Tumbakiada, Dene Lamada, and Chiki Chelia, Kese Majeba, Naya Meba, Lucian, Mazuchinian Gores, has on the Dicor Mashura. Last night we concluded looking at the outline, developing respect for the Dharma and those who teach the Dharma. And this was presented, as we looked last time and last night, as quotations from both sutra as well as the garland of birth stories. The meaning in brief here is that we should ensure when receiving teachings that we have a respectful approach to both the teachings and the teacher, the propounder of the teachings. So this is of great importance because through having respect, one's mind will be open and receptive to the teachings, and thereby one will take the teachings as personal instructions. Moreover, we looked at how to generate this open-minded approach, which comes about through recognizing
the great value of this opportunity, both in terms of the rarity with which one can have the opportunity to receive teachings, as well as the tremendous benefit that will come through hearing the teachings and integrating them. This recognition leads to joy arising in the mind. And joy is an important foundation in that it leads to an aspiration to receive teachings and to integrate it, and an enthusiasm to continue to do so. Moreover, we looked at how it is important to approach the teachings with an attitude freed of pride and arrogance, as well as contempt and competitiveness. This too, ensuring that one is free of afflictions like this too ensures that one's mind is open and receptive. Moreover, in relation to specifically to the teacher, recognize his many good qualities and kindness in imparting what he has come to realize.
Dini zadang zugi dini ki ne chue nyen bi kapla dang zugi samlo dus dang go gre sa je dang zugi sim du ki nyamlen gi rimba nga sim du ki tablam sung go ro ji sim du ki tablam sung wa zan sim dul la de gar se ne nyomo be choge samlo de pa ka ji gewi choge samlo de ya nyuba cher gongbo gongpe de da de gomshi so ya de la sim du wa si go ro sim du ye tabse 디시고로 되네 자담 베네 지게 소수게 나게 제반에 디 녀모마 차요로와 안체당 최송어 볼에 계수 제반에 데디 녀모바라와 디바라와 안지 마구바 제반에 디바 차고로와 안디니게 지게 안에 구셰메바다 데네 제반에 안지게 도시네 통중 다야다 데네 제반에 고 디바 차고로 디수 먹어야 해도 받아 지선당 안주기 디 먹어야 디파 디카발라 안에 가르쳐 오래세네 안지게야 안지게 라마델리아 구셰프제야 단 데바제 소솔이야 안지 야 토살에 샤제 두수 구구르제베네 나게디 팔이 이까고 거다 같이 나게 용거 말아 진짜 남만 단 최리아 데바던 구셰프제도 계수디 매바샤고 계수 용거 말에 진짜 단 나게 용거 말에 계수 용거 말에 되네 ane maguba dike yungo marwa 진짜 디니기 디버 사상 가로 버와 진짜 디니기서 삼로도 두시데 디 삼로도 야 지금 검시를 쳐줘도 니 가서 wor스는 아주 최지냐다 최지가 라마데 직냐기 되바다 듬바디 슈크체로 거로와 듬바디가제 슈크체로 바나가서 듬바디가제 슈크체 누버가제 슈크체죠베나 디zam기 만도 될야 냐당 안지 최슈엘레 지금 롬녀체레 베수 셰차 야 망아지고로 받아 주 망아죠 다 가제 롭좀 망아제외기 디츠기 난줄이야 시엔다 나줄로디 야게 줘야 돼 야가 주고로 봐 진짜 되네 인사 다 최년배 갑이야 되네 삽섭체는 년고를 해야 돼 송고야디 나주게 셈뭐 공부도 줘야 치도 송고를 되네게 된다 송고로 봐
As we saw in the second line of the Garland of Birth Stories, that when listening, one does so with the goal to tame or subdue one's mind, which means subduing one's mind means not restraining from being influenced by the afflictions. And the way to restrain one's mind from being influenced by the afflictions is to cultivate virtuous minds. So these two are done together. On one hand, one is cultivating virtuous minds, and whilst doing so, one restrains one's mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. This serves to tame or subdue or discipline one's mind. So therefore, when approaching teachings and whilst receiving teachings, guard one's mind implicitly from pride, competitiveness, and contempt directed towards either the teacher or the teaching. It's imperative that one does so for several reasons. One, these are afflictions, and the purpose of receiving teachings is to subdue the mind from being influenced by the afflictions. Moreover, these particular afflictions serve to close one's mind and prevent the Dharma from entering, prevent one from being able to drink the nectar of the teachings. And the way to do this is to on one hand, reflects on the many good qualities of the teacher and his kindness, and therefore a great fortune at the opportunity to receive teachings from him, and moreover the rarity of the opportunity to receive teachings at all. And this serves to generate joy. And a joyous mind aids the rise of aspiration. And aspiration is so important in that the stronger one's aspiration, the greater with ease we'll be able to overcome the obstacles that arise for us to both receive teachings and integrate those teachings. We'll, with joy and which leads to aspiration, we'll much more easily push away the obstacles that we encounter. And this then will serve to bring about ever more rapid spiritual developments.
Andinegi da samlodi tusin tangga de ngazuki da jisim duwi tablam tele sungore neneshi adina shin da jidan de jik mangwo ro da ngazuki jik le gyuji sa ne digi tebu dilia andi jinga zuki dabe tebu gyuding tebu sa da anjige nemi tebu sa mangbo li ro 제보 들라 답에 제보 규定제보 내면이 제보세 제사디 되니기 지제야도 되니기 개와치 삼다베나 개와지기 제보다 되는 쇼하지 근데 미가바로 삼는 거나 디게 제보 되네요 당아주 그디네 지용도 아주 냠뇨로 시루와당아주 또 미질에 지기디네 견주라지 삼다되는 지 미지 이게 시는 남산 견이 남산하고도 어다 디견의 디너를 차상해서 배는 견제 남산 전투야로지 아니 최신현진의 소지들이 어디 그 디네시 디디 말어 왔으면 디네 너를 차기도 왔으면 남산 견 통초쇼를 그래서 내가 아주라 삼로디 곰시를 직 디네 유리가블 남산 디기 기인전에 가래시나 견 남산 통초쇼로죠 아직미 대바 다나다 디니기 계획 지게 야고섬다네 어디고 디니셔데 남산 균 마통하지 근데 직초 진에 야고셔야 돼 디네 야고도 선배게 되네 연구로와 그래서 당한 저기 검시 토네 디 연구로 받아 가서 가서 계획 초대 나자로 지다 디네 검시 수치 보이는 남산 나자 계셔셔로 보자 양지 계획 삼로도 교회는 남산은 계획 계셔셔 연구로 받아 디가서 그 검시 원기 연구로 받아 디가 저기 세보라 실내 가르쳐베네 검시가제 숙제나 디초려야 이제 삼로디 숙제 리고로 받아서
What is being presented throughout this text are various methods to subdue our mind. And there's a great emphasis right here at the outset on how to engage with teachings. And the reason why this is presented in such an expansive way is because this is our very foundation to make the most of these incredible opportunities. So to talk a little further, if we think of the varying types of ripening results, there are many types. Results similar to the cause, habitual tendencies, environmental results, and so forth. These all come from either virtue or non-virtue. From virtue leads to happy results, from non-virtue leads to suffering results. And virtue and non-virtue refers primarily to one's way of thinking. And so here, when we are being advised to guard our mind from afflictions such as pride and competitiveness and contempt, we are being advised to guard our mind from non-virtue, which leads to suffering results. And in the context here, it not only do such afflictions lead to further suffering, but it closes the door to spiritual development. And here, we should look within ourselves and be aware of the times, whether in a teaching environment or generally in society, where we see our mind having a negative view of someone, and then watch how our mind is in terms of what this person is saying. And if we have a critical view of someone, a negative view of someone, we are going to be looking for faults in what they have to say. And where they're saying something which is correct in accordance with reality, we'll be quite close to that because our mind is explicitly looking for faults, looking for reasons to confirm our bias. So this then not only leads to the accumulation of negativity, because such a mind of contempt is a mind of pride. But moreover, it closes us to the opportunity to be positively influenced now in the teaching environment, to learn and to develop spiritually. So rather, we need to have a more balanced approach, an open mind, and be receptive to the words of the Dharma by having an approach which is free of contempt, free of pride, and thereby focus on the true meaning, applying it to ourselves. If one doesn't do so, one is just strengthening our obstacles, our inner obstacles, to the accumulation of virtue, and thereby limiting our spiritual development.
Dine zada anzu de samlo dushine samlo tangje samlo de anjigi gewi cholya gyurtang ge komshi soya de so da di ba da nyamlen rin ba se de anzu samlo de gewi chol samta di pang komshi soya che nubalo char tang go ro ba dine enza da di samlo dushine dus tang go re sa che tang anzu samlo de anzu gi digi tingi dewa dubya da dunga se de anzu samlo gywa da we thone ndugo ro ma de shen tapshi ka min do me wan za da samlo gywa da da de sung go ro ba da din din che go re sa de.
That's what's just been said ties into what you will also have heard many times, that we all want to experience happiness, freed of suffering. And the way to do this is to change our way of thinking, turning away from non-virtuous ways of thinking, the afflicted ways of thinking, and strengthening our habituation to virtuous, wholesome ways of thinking. This is how we attain lasting happiness. This is how we abandon suffering, by changing our way of thinking. And here we see the need to tame or subdue our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions by strengthening our habituation to virtuous ways of thinking.
Da din ma ya jigwa re da sang yi nga ju gi chue nyen ba de la an chi gan s nyen go re la de le ya ne gi gyun sum bang je an ji tun yin du shi zhu dian je dian bei tuo ne an ji ge ji chue nyen go re sa je din ma da di shu go re ya chue nyen na go le ya sam na da da go ma du shi sum go re.
Now returning to the text, we're continuing to look at how to listen to the Dharma. But it's important here, so we see in the middle, in the handout, it's at the top of page 23, and in the published book, it's on page 21. So we see that the actual way to listen has 2 points, giving up the threefold to the vessel and relying on the 6 perceptions. Here again, just to tie into what has just been said, whilst we are talking about ways to listen, it is primarily about ways to think. So be very aware that when we're talking about listening, we are talking about how one should be thinking when receiving verbal information. So this is primarily on how to think whilst hearing teachings.
And in ma da ne gi gyun sum je ne gi gyun sum bang ba da du shi zhuk dian ba wo sa shi tu sung do de da dang bo ni ane ne ka bu ba da ka yin do se yang mi zang wa dang zang do xin yang xep de na ane de der xep de na sa andi di ba de lo shan ni xep de na andi ma lo sha de ba xep de na der le char phap yang na do mi zhou wa dang song yang mi zang we ba be tong wa la so bi ko ba mi zhou ba mi zang we ma le yang na do mi ne be mi ne ba ane sa ni zhou wo sa chi de bie ro chi da di so re ni gyun sum gi de.
The reading from the text. Even if sent by the gods, rain cannot enter a vessel turned upside down. A vessel that faces upward but is unclean will pollute the rain and render it undrinkable. Or say a vessel is clean but the bottom leaks, then even though the rain goes in and is not spoiled by dirt, it does not stay.
Alright, that in again, I was going to gyun sum bang wa tu ji du ji du shi
죽된 바스로 뇌 교에서 당할 beneng azu khala saegi sasegi 뇌 로 직교 바이나 직뇌 ene 가소래 안에 지게 khala sasedi 뇌디 마 제두스네 카불로시 샤샤바나 아니 샤야 직용으로와 뇌 카불로 샤야 직제 뇌지 탈레칼라디 두시 카불로 샤야지 되네야 뇌 칼라서디 바이 직 나로래야 쪼바 유주에데 바이나 되네 여바체 되네 뇌디 지게 카부 말아와제 야샤 뇌디 나로 장고 여바이나 이가 되게 바이나 안디 뇌 괜해 줘래 그래서는 뇌 괜히 김자가라서는 뇌 카불로 샤바이나 아주 칼라루나 아니 칼라 탈라나리 뇌 나리기 말와 안도 제래야 칼라사야시 뇌디 레요도 수케바도 동바로와 칼라루 칼라라요 말에 제자디 나주기 칼라산 조도야기 강아지 세투고 말와 제래 바데네 균직세 다니 뇌기 나로려야 쪼바다 되니기 여바디 균지리에서 곧 카야 세되베네 균레 제자들 마 칼라시 가서 루나 나로 두고래 이나야 디나디게다 니 쪼보 여바디게 안디게 가서 칼라사네 주불 뇌거라 살로야요 말아서 제자들 살로야 메반자 만주기 조도야기 강아지 세이마레스 살루고 말레스 안에다 뇌데 장마체 나로 장마 장자체 안지게 마 안에직 야카 두세베네 이가지 되되바다 이가 되되바네 근데 칼라도 술로베네 마사루레스 사로벤자 안디나 라고 말바 맞아 대사와섬데 사야메르와다 사야메도 안 조도베 강아디 아주 세투고 빈문와스 제자 뇌유 균숨세데 뇌 카부바디야 뇌유 균레 뇌 카야세데베네 이가 마도바이네 나로기 베네 쪼바다 되네 여베네 사모라기 된 쪼바 여베네 디하 균레스 칼라 판도고 말레스 안다마 뇌 상마체 안 카야 쇠데베네 마 이가 되 마사도에 쇠나 대한 뇌견에 안디 뇌견에 소라 다다 뇌견자다 안 칼라사 뇌데 가르 구르세네 뇌데 야바 야 카쇠 나로 장마 아니 이가 마도바 쇠베네 안델바 칼로 루샤베네 데 루징 아주 사야데 사네 만주게 안에 지고 조도베 강아지 세투고래 제래 세상 뇌데라 만도 칼라사에 뇌데라 데니시 고고레스 세상 칼라 미루디 갑래야 소고레 마도 가불로네 칼라서야 말 세상 상마치 고고레 뇌샤 이가 마도 같이 고고레 해야지 제가 뇌 가보바다 뇌 카이긴도 세제 미사와 안 장도 세제 샵도와 세디 뇌 균숨들이지
The way to understand this is if we think of a vessel, let's take a bowl from which we'd perhaps eat some soup. So if the bowl were upside down, so we see this in the first line, a vessel turned upside down. So if we think of a bowl being upside down, if we pour soup onto it, nothing is going to go inside. It's just going to mess everywhere. And when we eventually turn the bowl the right way around, it's going to be empty. And so that is the first illustration, a vessel, the first fault, a vessel turned upside down. And the second then is if a vessel that faces upward but is unclean. So here you have your bowl and it's facing the correct way, but it's dirty inside. You pour soup into it, you're not going to eat that because the bowl itself was filthy. So you rather will not eat. And now the soup or the food is unable to fulfill its purpose. One remains hungry. Then the third fault is a vessel that is clean, but the bottom leaks. So yeah, the bowl is right way up, and it's clean, but there's a hole in the bottom. Then one pours the soup in, and it just runs straight out. So again, one is unable to satiate one's hunger. One's needs are not fulfilled. So these are the three faults of a vessel that is upside down, a vessel that is the correct way round, or a bowl that's the correct way round, but it is dirty inside, or one that is the correct way round, it's clean inside, but it's leaky. So none of these are suitable. None of these serve the required purpose. Rather, what we need is a bowl or a vessel that is upright, that is clean, and it's flawless in that it's without a hole or not even cracked.
상한 저게 칼라세기 뇌디 donda kare digi goba rush kare lana delya khala luche anzo sahay gorwa sabayna ansay gi ngazo gi jodo bi dunga ganga se gorwa jesa negi gyun sum de da yene dela luche khala sahay de rago mara mara de ngazo gi ane jodo bi gi ganga de se tu go marwa.
The purpose of the bowl or the vessel is to enable us to overcome suffering, the suffering of hunger. So this is the purpose of a bowl. This is the role it is supposed to play.
That is the kala sayagi chitu jodo de kapdo dunga dobe dunga se de kala sa gora kala sayagi sayala deneji luche sa go za di do don dala de kat ne di nganjugi 조도비 강아세게 된다라 칼라사기 치도리 진짜 되네기는 카불로바다 나로 쪼고여바다 안뉘 이샵도에는 디나네 칼라 루셔사네 자이고 된다 주고 말와 된다 디르와.
It's quite clear. If one is hungry, one has the opportunity to eat. But one was to make one of these errors of either having the bowl upside down or having it the right way up but dirty inside or cracked at the bottom, one would be unable to partake in the delicious meal, one would be unable to overcome one's suffering.
Denigi Ranzu Luban Marua Maze Konu Kabuloshna, that Lee Jibujima Charles, Uji Niminga Chabu Bakjuina, Nalaji Dry Malaysia. She's an Nalo Dry Mena, and then Jellet Pobosu Kidu, Sak Hayamarwada. She's at the Kabulovashi, New Guineas order.
So relating to the first fault of a vessel turned upside down, we have, even if sent by the gods, rain cannot enter. So no matter how much rain there would be, it could not enter. No matter how much food one had the opportunity to receive, it could not enter one's bowl that was turned upside down.
Just knew the pan Nango Kalo Yalo Shaban Nalo Zopata Diniki Chiki Dugru Chevena, that in Kalaluba, that they Kalu, Diziru Lube, Nalo Dugo, the Ine Chik Zopa Yevas and Digi King answer Sahalia, Tunia de Pandu Mares, Chesaticanga, Drotobata, Kaukombe Dunga, say to go Mares.
And the fault that follows from a vessel that faces upwards but is unclean is that it will pollute the rain that now can enter, the rain from the gods, and render it undrinkable. So whether we think of it in terms of a liquid food like soup or solid food, if the container itself is polluted, it becomes undrinkable or unedible.
Misawe Malaysia, that I knew the Yasubache, now Lord Zangma, Misamebache, Misawe Malaysia, now do Mineba, senior draw was Yuna, now the Malabajama, Sani draw was Sadugure. Dine San drove in there, and digging on the look about to go Martin, Sayoma was a Mazar Medi, and then go about to go Maris.
And then similarly, in relation to the third fault of a vessel, say the vessel is clean but the bottom leaks, then even though the rain goes in and is not spoiled by dirt, it does not stay. So in other words, one is still unable to satiate one's hunger because the food flows straight through the bowl.
Then Shab Modova, then the Kalalu Kalia, Kayalo, Sedi was Kugores, then the Lubena, Nado Kaladugure, then the Zangmoyas and Salugure, the Yigam Yavaza, and the Tinana Sahara Gore, this Shadu, and the Manjuki, Trotova, the Nigga, Chike, Kakombe, Dunati, say to Gore, Sages, Sumoro, and the Nichikure, Sages.
The vessel that is required is one that is facing the correct way up, that is clean and not at all broken. Then it can fulfill its purpose.
다디 베디시도 된다라 가르송고를 세나다마 니레 다디 대신도 사다 최최비게 저도 신자 나외 려버 미되바다 디도 신자 로버 송와 함 공로 견자바 소다 견제다 매자 년비 뒤수 송위 치단 되 템버 마제바 제바라 소비게 냠버 규나 최퇴비게 고바침보 쳔보르 미규르베 아네 대다다 자와 괴데스
That's an illustration which is quite clear, and now the text comes to the meaning behind the illustration. If when you sit in the same way, if in the same way there is no great need to hear the Dharma, if when you sit in a place where the Dharma is being explained, you do not listen well, or if you listen but take it wrong with a faulty motivation and the like, or if these other faults are not present, but the words and the meaning get grasped at the time of hearing and are not consolidated and get lost through forgetfulness and so forth. Therefore, you should be free of these faults.
소수기 나위레버 마디바세 만년바시 오라 야고지 만년바야는 민님도 직기시시에 돼야다 야나야 지금 소수게 산다로지 진행 되어봐라 소바다 야나 니쿠 되어봐이나 되는 아주게 가르시게 가야 아니 고해 고고 말로 된다래 가르시를 하고 고고 말로 제가 뉘어 카보바데 직바레스 뉘어 카보바이나 디나나 가르로나나로 루고 말로 디나심 최 년비 최 송비게 디나네 제 년사 디나로 여바이네 야나 소소랑가 시시한다지 년 되어봐다 야나 지게 텔레만년바제 계시에 되어봐라 소바다 야나 니후 되어봐다 있나 아니 강셰바디 투고 말와스 제자 투여자 가소레 뇌나나 마도와다 지바레 뇌 카보보다 지바레 스틴데 되겠네 카보보다 지바레 디니 엔자 아니 강게 마쳐봐 인자 아니 삼다스 가요 말아 되네 뭐바는 지 삼다야데 디셰서 되네 셰서 스베 삼다메자 당 저기 셈 주어줘야라 팽교 말해서 다데 칼라사야 마편바 나시 아니 칼라사야 저 조도베 동안 셈에도 봐 나시 디니 지금 마쳐봐 인자 디 냠린 제네 아주 동아세야나 디기 주어야라 팽교 말해서 난 요 카보바다 지바레서
The first fault, which is a vessel turned upside down, then the meaning of that illustration is when you sit in a place where the Dharma is being explained, but you do not listen well. So this would be where one is in a teaching environment, but rather than engaging with the teachings, one is distracted by something else. Maybe one has earphones in and is listening to something else, or reading something else, or has fallen asleep. In instances like this, one is like an upturned vessel. One has the nectar of Dharma pouring down all around you, but nothing penetrates. Therefore, no benefit is attained from even being in the teaching hall. The purpose of the teachings being given is not being attained by oneself. It's like a person who's hungry and being given plenty of nutritious food, but not taking it. So here, the person who's like, or the student who's like an upturned vessel, they have all this abundant Dharma presented to them, but they are not receiving it, and therefore they are unable to be impacted by the teachings in terms of developing the causes for happiness and overcoming the causes for suffering.
Tendu Xinjiang Lober Songwa
군론 균차바 소당 네 소 균차바 소스래电电的新疆老板说啊군론 균차바 소바스 제자의 최대 되게 년고어를 때 이나 그 로바서데 그 시에디 바로 독서 삼다야다 근데 군론이야 균체 어디 그 대시에 다가 말했어야 되게 그 균다지 군론이야 즉全年 비급이야 될이야 균 대비 돈의 소속이 안전이 삼다지 진변 아니 즉 삼다지 년바이나 아니 디기 아니 가서르네 마셔야돼 어거셔야돼 마르와 디려와 사야돼 지게 아니 그디 너저 중다 되게 시행민도 와서 베데네에서 균단의 즉 삼다에도 아니 칼알마소나 뇌단을 두고 때 매기 쪽어디 칼라사 살루고 말와 디나시 그 년고를推过 때 이내 그런 그 로바소 와도 균 군론 균 대위 돈의 삼다자 뭐 바네디 퇴배 되는데 그 삼다 냠는 지금 말했어 냠는 맞아 봐자 디 그 동아시아 디기 주위에 거바 두고 말했어 두고 말했어 제 칼라사 몰라봐도 지바래서 어디 디스모르.
The second fault is a vessel that is unclean. So here one would imagine that if food was placed into your bowl, but your bowl was filthy, whilst you have food, and that this food has the potential to ease your suffering, because the bowl is filthy, you will not partake of it, and therefore your hunger will not be satiated. So similarly, the illustration the example is explained with, if you listen but take it wrong, with a faulty motivation and the like. So here, one is listening, one is hearing the words, but one's mind is negative. One is criticizing the teacher, one is criticizing the teaching. So thereby, one's motivation is clearly flawed. One's thinking, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or it is not like this. It's actually like that. So one here is has an approach of arrogance, looking down on the teacher or the teaching. So the result of this is, whilst the words have been heard, one will not put it into practice because of the dominance of the afflictions in one's mind. And if one does not put into practice what one has heard, no benefit will be attained.
데네기 뇌샵도와 세디 빌레 드나레 빌 뇌샵도와 뇌샵도와 루나 마사조지 아니 지게 사야라고 말와 이거네 장마자야 카킨도 쇠디베네 이건 여바자데 말루션 마사도 거바 디네자 디사야라고 말아 디네즈 조도베 팽고 말와 디나신다 균데다 매장서다 균데자 매장세도 지금 최년비가 수입에 바 지가 오직 연구여 봐체 이때 그 니코와다 되는 게 매봐 한국론 한바다 되는 로고소와서 매봐 있나요? 견데다 매자 년비 뒤서 송위 측당 된 템버를 맞이해봐 제발로 소베 냠냠버 균나스 지장한 두신의 야고진이 안지게 제 연구할 때 한국론에 지가 오직 집에는 아직도 대바던 90전에 네 안지 아고지 년배네 이내다 지기 퇴고 지바다 지기 다디 된디가 셈리아 냠망해 봐체 나도스 낭메 쇼르제 지기 안 주게 지데스 년기요 발라 구잡당 안에 되네게 안에 지게 덴베토네 년고르데 나 지 양바라발랑 아주 지기와 샨다레 셈양제 누스야도 안 디마진 젤이야 디게 지 네고고서 갈라서 세디 젠바 제소반의 젠마도 바네 마오바네 진예비게 젤이야 안는 저기 곰게디 삼다요 곰게디라게 말가서네 대시 야원 제사로 봐 제바로 젠베 메진바 제바로 제반서 곰게라게 말 대시 디나시 지사딩아 동아시아단 디기투에게 냠는 제야라 팽교 판도 두고 말레스 제산뇌 날마 루 장마레스 마치데 마사로데 사렌데 사이메르와 제 칼라 되는 사람이 저도에 팽겨 말아 디나시 녀의 약혼녀 가서 녀바체 아니 가서 녀다 주시도 구셔다 되베 녀바제데 이나 잼비 짐마도도 마오바나 소소 라지보디지 라면시게디 바 녀지 곰자 삼타도 디 땡겨 말아 제산 되니기 인자다 아 되니 괜레야지 되니 괜디 되니 레야지 잼베 마심바이나 아니 괜 차고레야지
The third fault is, the text says, even though the rain goes in and is not spoiled by dirt, it does not stay. So this then is where the bowl has a crack or a hole in the bottom. Then even though one receives soup, it's just going to run out. And you will be unable to eat and satiate your hunger. So the meaning here is then presented in the text. If these other faults are not present, so in other words, one is listening well, one is not like the upturned vessel, and one has a good motivation, wanting to hear, wanting to understand the Dharma and apply it to one's mind, so one has a good motivation, so one's not like a dirty vessel, but the words and the meaning you grasped at the time of hearing are not consolidated and get lost through forgetfulness and so forth. So one is hearing the teachings with a good motivation, but unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but it's quite a pitiful situation because the student has a good motivation and is trying, but what is being heard is not settling inside, and therefore it's quickly forgotten. And in fact, it may well be experienced that the student leaves the teaching and struggles to recount what was taught. Maybe we'll have a very general idea, but they will struggle to take away anything more than that. And therefore, from that teaching, they will not have anything that they can apply to their mind. They will not be able to take away anything to meditate on. And therefore, they will not attain the benefits that otherwise they could have, because they did listen, they did have a good motivation, a receptive motivation, but they did not put to memory what they were hearing.
Dine inza da gyun dine chimba na dine thone chue nyenba ina kariyarasana chue tebyo goba chenpo migirwe, goba chenpo migirwe. Da goba chenpo migirwe se de gyune goba meba gyune mare se ora da goba da dana chenpo goba chenpo duko mare se. Manzo chue tebyo goba de karela na tebyo ke duende samda ngom je gomyage gomyade ruas. Gombale dine anangari ngosine di anzuki nyomoba seatan digitubia chagore sel goba chimumrubes na goba be zawgi meba represent gyune meba mare na chötubi pyon di ngor heserwada jig.
Just to say, as a translator, thus far the English and the Tibetan are really in quite a different order. It's not any mistake in the translation, just reordered. So now we come to phrase above, there is no great need to hear the Dharma. So what this means is merely hearing the Dharma is insufficient. One has to meditate on what one hears. These two need to come together, hearing and reflecting. One needs to integrate what is hearing, put it into practice, gain experience of what one is hearing. This is the purpose, not merely to hear the teachings, but to integrate them into one's very way of thinking, so that the Dharma becomes one's very mind, one's very way of being. That is the purpose of hearing. The purpose of hearing is to hear and reflect.
Dine zadang zuki ngaron zolya shukche yongayadi anjike chue nyembe na anjike jembe jike songayadi chasang song tuyayadi kale haburwa jilamzang chu anju bine chuzi jik shishebe na chuzi jik nalo shikyo chasang di odi dila songsenbeke da samlaya char tuyay jembe songayadi chu kale haburwa 이내다 먼저게 디나데 돈에 닝보로 시대서 아는 거 저기 템베시야데 조어디로와다 조어디로와데 디 템베가 마체바체 신도바시 고고래 시사.
The reality is when one's hearing a teaching for an hour and a half, it's difficult to be able to remember every single point that has been made. But one really should come away with as much as possible, so as the more that one comes away with, the more one has to integrate into one's practice.
간실에 최년비 갈아 가르고 그랬음 대신 뇌들이야 뇌디 장마 안지게 뇌야 칼라 루비 갑리야 뇌야 칼 쇠바체 나로 장바체 샵 마도와 지혀바이나 안디나네 칼라 루제 능한수 사일 판도고레스 강아 쪼베 쪼도베 동아 세투고레스 디나시 당한 최연베 갑리야 안지게 지게 셈디파 지게 샹달을 삼남면나 진남면다 샹달 베시 마상 삼마당와제 마당와제 안야 직최당 라마디지 니엘 셰바 카사나 디린 디쇼 셰바 나진 저기 라마 최당 안최모벌 대바당 그바 세지도 제바 제는 데잖아 데네가 가와상보 최지 빼마세 가와상보레 삼베당 토는 주변에 대군모들이 야고 교요 말아봐 생군로 야고 차되래 지자 데네게 다 최시비 갈라 데네게 고하라바 야고레 삼자네 지소수기 배지 남이야다 데네가야 마당와제 야고신 예배나 다디안요 카부버도 마임바 된달에 녀바 차고래 온두시는 예배가 녀네 당아 지금 년배가다 어디 송송 디데도와 디데도와 선배게 안데 삼려야 아주 잠바로 도스체네 잠배 진지는 년고래 사실 안던달라 안디네게 쉐냐 되는지 년고래 되는 년바이나 안행아 저기 된다데라 어 지게 셈려야 제 차에 용그래 대참 차에는 딩한저 검제비 갑라 안디지 디 검제의 삼다다의 싱그리 디네 삼다에도 디게 안에 야도 야네 땅에도 먼저 강하세야단 디기주에도 줍두고레스 제사다 디네 제사다 아주 최퇴비고 거바 가르스네 아주 디기주에도 동화세야디로 와스 제사디 두스는 년바이나 최퇴비고 거바 된다도 줍고레스 돈다디네 숨고로 와다
The text continues, therefore, you should be free of these faults. This refers to the faults of being like an upside down vessel, a dirty vessel, or a broken vessel. So this is not such a vessel is not what we'd use to eat, and we should not have these faults as students of the Dharma either. And therefore we should, when approaching teachings, try and listen without distraction, limit our distractions, so that we can pay attention to what is being said, and when we notice the mind is distracted, bring it back to what is being said. And secondly, as has been mentioned in the previous outline, we should have a motivation or an attitude of respect towards the teacher and the teaching, reflecting on how fortunate we are to be able to receive this teaching and reflect on the qualities of the teacher. And then thirdly, whilst hearing the teaching, we should also be trying to set what is being said into memory. So utilizing various techniques to recall later what has been said, because the whole purpose of hearing teachings is not merely to gather knowledge, but so that one can, based on this knowledge, integrate it through reflecting on it repeatedly again and again, making it part of one's very being. That is the purpose of receiving teachings.
ane nya chikche andelia ane kunlu so samlu thone ta denige chue shue ko brava tang denige pe apore sembe ke chue tang chue mo bolia deba dang guje de dembe thone nya dire dine nya ne da chue da odin da di sungu do sembe da na juge dona ni bo semle dire 다 가사나 디레소야 되게 당아주 템베 신예데 가르친 거 그랬으네 최년 배갑려야 최단 최모 벌려야 안데바던 90년에 연구월에 해야돼 디신야다 로레 파 아주 그 템베 신예 디레 데 짐바임바 디신네 뭐 바나주 최슈베갈래 남사 어찌게 두섬다는 얘들와 당아지 가사나 디레소 템베 신예데 가르친 거 그랬으네 최 모발랑 아긴 최년비가랑 아게당 안직균 다야다 되게 통조 마당와지 최다 최모바 니가 응구셔다 안데바당 그버체는 연구를 세대 다 가사나 디링이 된다 인보 지송도 와서베 디셈을 냐야들 와다 템베세 디르다 두파 가사나 디망고셔 인보 파준데 템베세 디마 뇨뇨주마 미도와데 가서 다 된다게 가사 Singui Gumseroda, Doda, and the tension room dinner said, or those Chimangboda, Gumzana in the Sunwarava, Chizanda Dona Nibos Jehedi, or that Dineshi color, Debata, and the Chisoso Kao Comia, Gubata, Duchin, and Gomkure, Yangure said. And delay, and I'm to get in Bachavana, the young and the Ranchibu, Semjan, Tamjigutana, San Yokoba to be children in some Yamgore said, or the nigger, then Ziedi, Yambik of the Dinish Yamgure, some bigger somebody, that Luziedi Dirwada.
What we've had presented both here thus far in our first hour together this morning as well as last night. Well, it's been quite a bit of time, but what has been presented basically is this. When one is listening to teachings, one needs to listen carefully, attentively, and with an excellent motivation, trying to put into memory what is being said. That is basically it. So then one may well think, why has Lama Tsongkhapa presented such a large, so many words to present something that could have been said in a sentence or two? Well, the reason to spend time on this is precisely to aid us to have a good motivation and to be open-minded and to recall what is being said, so that hopefully one will now, through having heard about this extensively, every time going forward, before entering a teaching and whilst in that teaching, watch one's mind, ensuring that one is open and receptive, one is not being distracted by other technology or other thoughts or sounds outside, but that one's mind is present, one's mind is open, and one has an attitude of joy and enthusiasm arising from an attitude of respect. This all will aid in you remembering what has been presented. And that is the key components, because independent on how much one remembers and the attitude with which it was received, one will be able to later integrate that. So the reason for this extensive presentation is Lama Tsongkhapa could have just written this in a summary form, just written the essence in a line or two. But he's rather presented reasons and he's presented quotations so as to make it more likely that we will remember what it has been presented and we will integrate it. So that is the case here, and it's the case throughout the text. So how to help you remember, to put into memory the teachings that one is hearing, is to listen with an open mind, a receptive mind, an enthusiastic, joyful mind, as well as to understand the purpose of every teaching, which is to help one spiritually develop and progress towards enlightenment. And when approaching the teaching with this attitude, it's much easier then to recall what is being said.
Desum yen bor sede, desum yen bor sede da, azu kunlo lia, anjike, deji, ne, dengi, jik, che, namien de, che yawu mania pache, and then kunlo la gyun chabeki, gyun de sung yutun yen pache, and jiki, and tempe masonba, desum yen bor na la dona la karsungor sene, desum yen bor dole, liaba rabdo nyon la yila songshik se, or je siksum songshin sa. The
text continues. The antidotes to the three are set forth in the three phrases in the sutras. So the antidote to these three, of course, what we've been looking at, to the faults of not listening at all, although being present, the faults of having a polluted motivation, and the faults of not recalling what one has heard. So the antidotes are set forth in three phrases in the sutra. Listen intently, in the correct way, and keep it in mind. So the first is listen intently. So here we listen to listen well, to pay attention.
Rabten la se di ne gyun kaso chige gyun na den ba se de disungor chizong kunlong hemba de niki ya an chige kunlong ya chige karso re kunlong hemba meba ondu sene kunlong de ya bo sin go re se Rabten la se de chig de ba tang ku shep de tembe to ne nyen go re se.
And the correct way, this refers to overcoming the antidote to the second fault, which is to listen with a correct motivation, a motivation of respect, a motivation of understanding the importance and the rarity of what is being presented, and a motivation of joy and enthusiasm.
The ila sungshik se di da jina da kang sumbe dönde de pa tembe mache ba che tembe kasa mache ba che tembe jingu khore jindu ba ko jingu khore sa che da ila sungshik se di sungorwa.
And listen with the intention to keep it in mind, to remember so listen with the intention to remember what is being taught.
Dan la da de ne sumle gyun cha ju be ne sumle cha an da de ang chen yin bi sam la da du chen ne sun ye de che rim che du che yin na wa di je za di de dona le de ne sun yo re se do yu kung de zhang go ba de je san dona le de ne sun yo re sa ji do ge zik di ge sun go re sa ji.
The Lama Tsongkhapa here is showing that these three faults of a vessel and their antidotes are something that he hasn't made up himself, but actually comes from a sutra, from the words of the Buddha himself.
And in a Jansa le Papa to make it be change simbi Sasia de Jansa na la Karsungorasena, Kun Shepherd Debada, Zeji Bada, Nawa Labada, Yi Dubada, Sim Tamji Samne, Nyambara Song Soos.
Having quoted sutra, then Lama Tsongkhapa quotes Sangha's bodhisattva levels. And in bodhisattva levels, we are told to listen with a desire to understand it all, single-pointedness, a heedful ear, an integrated mentality, and fully focused attention.
Ma san yi ji che so bi ka la de don da de ning bo de kar kar sung yo ba da de ne ge pa ji pa de che ye ge don da le ya she bar de bi ge dun ba don de yer chi nyen gu re si go ro da ga je ji do xin kun she bar de ba da sa je ji ji kun she bar de ba da la yo de che so bi ka bla kar kar sung ge don da pa she ba ha ko he de ngi di nyen gi se bi ge sam da ji do xin Kunwa shepherd denigi hagor debaji, Dumba Dunyan ten Yangures, and then Zechik Baladu, and the Sim Shandapa, Chik Naming to the Masowache, and the Gangsui Dunda de Pa Yahuchis Samataji, Namiat Yagaji and Yangures, Sungro, Queen Shepherd Debata, Zechik Pasedi.
The first two are quite clear. Listen with a desire to understand it all. So listen with the intention to understand the entirety of what is being presented. And single-pointedness refers to listening in a concentrated manner, free from distraction. When one's mind is just distracted, return and continue to try to listen in a concentrated manner.
The now Laba dance the Nyamba Siurva, the now Laba than the Nyamba level, which is the Nye, you got Amjud Pa Chipa. Ya watching Yangu, some which now a dish in Yangu said, now a labada. You do but I said the same depa, we shifted in between Yangu research. And then Simjan Tamjiki, Tamsamne, Nyambara Jaw, said the Diana, and chicken, Simjan Tamjiki to Endo, Sanjoko to be Chizu Yins and be some dance to do chin, and say, the Yamlen Chieg to and Yins and be some Yangu research.
A heedful ear. This you should understand as listening attentively. So we have the expression, lend me your ear. So here the meaning is to listen attentively. And an integrated mentality is better understood as a subdued or a humble mind. where one's mind is subdued from the afflictions, one is, and thereby has a humble attitude. In other words, one is showing, has an attitude of respect for the teacher and teaching. This then serves for the mind to be subdued or humble. And the third, fully focused attention. This refers to that one should keep one's general motivation for engaging in the Dharma present whilst listening to teachings. In other words, one is listening to the teaching, wanting to understand it completely, listening in a concentrated manner and with a respectful attitude in order to spiritually develop so as to be able to benefit all sentient beings. So the final point, a fully focused attention, refers to the general motivation of wanting to spiritually develop so as to be of ever greater benefit to all sentient beings.
大对那宁波的两个这个去年的节庆不是修切过了吧？可是呢，两个这个三九国王托巴切瓦什么呢？这个三九国王特别给他们年龄的人不的嘎嘎的机会为辛苦过了吧？他的辛苦吧，咱的现的退吧了的呢，退过了吧？就咱退一遍，这节庆不修切。 但好像年里样子退把节庆不一般，可是没退把人呢，那就年龄其他新嘛了吧？就咱退的节庆不一般，修去，就那今年在的退的节庆不一样，退别个不了，你去年别个不了，那个小了现在退的节庆不修去了，觉得人家的就去年别个不了，那个这个就怕这啥不啥去呢？变这生那面的马上而且，俺这年末后而且。 这啥不说真的严过过嘛？都对面年白呢，那个说的这个退把节庆不是先退把这年白呢，这年亏啊，那面上真的那要大那个嘛，就对那种嘛，就咱的那个退的节庆不是，他退别个不了，去续别个不了，那什么的怕那面现大了，上马当去，当然的用多别那个就今年别个了，这个这个所说的这个。 年都这样的，俺说个两个肉这样了，说把它，这车上这样都，第四把三六的把第四把修起来当的，俺们这了几个对不呢？对那的什么的这样的个看我吃过了哇，就在的那边把这什么那面现在嘛大些，这。 三六可能呢，年给确定了把这些都什么天上什么大些，俺是一的得了对，这什么大，俺把俺这个那月给都是年过的，就是这年把这那年用的，俺这这样俺这工作了呀，这那么经常的缺当缺毛把了呀，对吧？当对吧？那个这年过的，是这个是呢。 第二年吧，呢，所以年个对吧？对年的对不对？修吃住过的，这修开始吃住吧呢，样呢样都，年个过不来个的，俺都是呢，第几个的，就像当俺这个刚送别个短大音不都，的地热多啊，生别个，公业他马上啊，地当波地公布多，你把地公布地送多是别个什么了呀？你这边信徒啊，过的经过的，的那个信徒呢，却起码说个康巴拿的说估计这个，你也把这个对公业呗呢，公业他人把这个把年的是新的的，都叫我那节庆不的，是的，就啥的，俺这个他这个去年别个特别节庆不一般的，特别告诉的，特别级别告不了呀，三六公路当，年那个日本的结果嘞，是的，当然这个都是呢，南端路、南家路是呢，的中国话的。
How we listen to teachings, how we hear teachings is really of great importance because, as we heard in previous sections, that it's important to understand the stages of training one's mind because if one lacks knowledge, it's impossible to develop a new skill. And if one's knowledge is limited, one's skill is going to be limited. So therefore, it's important that one hears teachings. And for the opportunity for one to take the most or gain the most from the opportunity when one has the opportunity to hear teachings, then it's important to listen well. So we see these three faults here. So what one should take away from this and have it set in mind so that one can keep it present throughout one's time of receiving teachings, that one should listen firstly attentively, free from distractions. And free from distraction refers to distraction in the place where one is. So one's not being drawn to other things in terms of what one sees or hears, but also from distracting thoughts, such as one's various responsibilities in the home or place of work. So when one's mind is drawn there, recognize this. Recognize that this is a fault and bring one's mind back to the teaching, trying to listen attentively, single-pointedly. And to aid this is the second point, that of one's motivation. Because if one's motivation is well developed, one can with greater ease draw the distracted mind back and listen attentively. So the motivation to have is a combination of respect for the teacher and teaching, which comes about through recognizing the great qualities of the teacher and the teaching, and also understanding the incredible importance of this opportunity in that whatever the topic is that is being presented is included in the cultivation of the qualities that will lead you to freedom from suffering and enable you to be of great benefit to others. So with this, when such a motivation is clear and developed within one will have joy, one will have enthusiasm and aspiration, making it much easier to listen. So this is how one's motivation will impact on one's attentiveness and one's ability to overcome distraction. Those two then aid the third part, which is to listen with the intent to put into practice what one is hearing. So this requires one to remember well what one has heard in the teaching, not just in the teaching, but after the teaching and long after the teaching. Because the purpose of receiving teachings is to transform one's mind, to reflect and meditate on what one is hearing. When one has understood this well, every teaching one receives, one will be receiving with the intent that taking this knowledge and integrating with it within myself, so hearing and reflecting, so that by reflecting on this every day, including it in my meditation, later I will be able to go into somewhere solitary, into an isolated place, and engage in solitary retreat on these topics. And this then, to be able to do that, means that one's entire career of hearing Dharma teachings need to be heard and integrated within oneself so that one can engage in solitary retreat in what one has heard. So with this motivation then, this will aid one's determination to remember what one is hearing. So in this way, these three components work well together: listening attentively, having a pure motivation, and listen with the intention to remember what is being taught, so that one can put it into practice.
지난 디네 자당을 가르 삼 코그레스네 디니스도 아다디나데 디네 송샤 지상에 디나니 때 용토금데 디네 진 용벤데다다지 판도시라메서라든지 예명에 미두세베 셈주 차야게 냐죠 봐 아디 말에 내 자기가 말에 디가르스는 디 나저 당보는 예 디년 년당 부이다고 기시오로와 부이다고 된시 년고르세야지 디 고고어데 람사 디나지 차토여 책임 말고 하죠 지난 누구신이 정의 전에 디네 마음번에 부이다고 디 차에 차토고를 마도 람상 디네 다시 부이다고 차토여 가보러 와 제가 가서 봐제 전비 진도야 갈래 가보러 와 제가 파직 맨주 누구신이 지난 디네 기지다 어디 디나 디네 키쇼서 아디 키쇼되면도 언지게 최슈베 갈라니 요구데 디네 자다 산다 제용도 디네자 다딩에디 다다 차기면 디 땡에디 냐면야 쳤민도 왔으면 삼다 당할 때는 쉬비데 차상 잼베 신투 마서 되게 대마서 하고 도마서 된다 나 지금 예시 처음에 어디 다다 책임도 와서 삼당으로 어디면 디마 디삼당교 말에 제가 나디디 소에디 녜베 겁레 뿌이다고 디코 캐슈로 좀 잘라든 만에 약속 부이다 보냐 데니스 고고래 송거로다 데니스 고고 봐서 데니 요라 길리 장도 지기 딜레마도 남사디난 차도에 가고로 와 데니 인자당 아주 가브리엘이야 지템베 마셈바다 안지 지게 니고와라 소바다 가브리엘이야 남면 쇼와라 소바다 데니 여베네 지게 고심주 자자디 참全民的 지금 심자데 데 마음반에 디제와의 민스베게 당이 다다 용투 민스베게 삼다 매바래 제가서는 안도 장기 부이다고도 차고 그러마도 마장바 부이다고 차매래 제자대 부이다고 차기민의 사람사선 부이다고 차야게 남양 거 매러와다 디네 인자다 내가 블랑아도 디네 용구리 대신 안줄리 제 직대니 용 직난 직바랑 차상 디네 용고로 와 제가 샘주자야 매바다 곧 무티지도 야게다야래 안 베주지긴 샘비게 샘주를 끼고 그래.
So having heard how Lama Tsongkhapa is advising his students to listen to teachings, when you hear this and then relate to how one perhaps does listen to teachings, you may see quite a gap and think, well, I certainly can't listen to teachings and don't listen to teachings with an undistracted mind and single-pointedly and with a motivation that is flawless. So this is beyond me. I cannot do this. Thinking like this is a grave mistake. Thinking like this in any context in the Dharma is a grave mistake. So I'll address it now in relation to our topic, but take it more broadly. What is presented is the goal, the highest goal, the perfect goal, the goal that we have the capacity to attain. What is presented is not where we are, but where we can be, what we have the ability to achieve. So again, I'm just presenting it in relation to the topic we're discussing, but it relates to every topic in the Dharma. What is presented is the ideal that we should set as our goal to strive for. But what is not presented is where we are. One, because we're in different places, but two, the purpose of the teachings is to integrate them so that we can develop. So in this way, the text presents our objective, our goal. So therefore, approach the teachings with a balanced perspective. Through hearing teachings and reflecting on the meaning, you should be getting to know yourself better. And thereby, you recognize where you are. Recognizing where you are does not mean being complacent. Rather, recognize where you are and see what your potential is. Recognize where you are and recognize your potential to improve. And in this way, strive to achieve these perfect goals. So you're not trying to be perfect now, but you're recognizing where you are and striving to become a perfected being, a Buddha. So generate the very best aspiration that one can with one's clear goal that one is progressing towards in mind. And then do one's very best. And always bear in mind that one's progress isn't linear, it isn't a straight line. There are times when one's obstacles are quite mild and one can progress quite quickly. There are other times when obstacles in one's life are quite overwhelming, and one may well be then sitting in a teaching but feeling ill, or have big things going on in one's life that one's mind is drawn towards. So in circumstances like that, one has greater obstacles to listening well. At other times, one may find one's quite attentive, but other days, one's mind may be quite dopey. That's okay. We accept where we are, but we also bear in mind our potential to improve. And we keep trying to do the best that we can within our own particular set of circumstances. And in this way, we will, over time, definitely spiritually develop.
네네 맞아. 내가 저기 람사 어디 소장아디 다달레 투민도 선배게다 제매제 주민도 선배게 바심주 자제샤나 인디고 말에 되는 사람 아주 네네 자도 진도 제게 일에다 내가 미
so this Kago, the Chinimbical, the Niki Kishu did that Dimitunian Gubore, Sembeke, Padlol Party, Hagowache, and then Sosugi. Din Hanshin Yung Matubene, Pamudu Jin, that thing in Din Hanshin, Maubanya, Din Yong Tuba Jins and Big Dubaki, and to do Sine, Yane, do Shinyabaina, and Chick Jabane, Gilligation, you to ask you to what down a chick Savujova, but Lamsa and then it's so I demanded the Tata woman is by Shashana, Digo Marches, the Dine, Zanguki, Chick Bene, San Yi, Sunatilla, Koyu Dunga Tala. Sanjo Koban Tokure, Sungore, Chisanda, Janshimi Yamlin Maduna, Ada, the tremendous big Jasan Gomara, Tisa, Dineza, Yandigalam Yirimba, and Ma, and Jikibu Chumialam Yirimba Sada, Dushin and Chikanzuki, Dushin Nangoro, and Dinashin Azuki, Chiki Tombasonia Rovishine, Chiki, Chiki Abosun took in the Dela, and then goes to Chiki Anchi, Nanjuki Rapchungu Tombasiada. Dile to us, Sharasu Mathematicala, and Gini Tombasiada. Then here as a Unibuso Mother, Nimichison, the degree say Yinaki Tombasiada, Tiring Chicken Nimichison Yaki Tombari, Dushin, Paji Dinema Sunsun, Chunjuna, Sunsun, Dineaji, Nimichison, the Dus Lara, to the Nimichi, the Dawajin, and the Nimichison, Dawanina, and Nimita Jelia Glissun. Dawchinala Nimichik Sheva, the Chinese, Sums, she's, and Dushin, and the Kansamila, Nubo Competitor, Denikin to Baleada, and Dinemagin, Dushin, Church, and Samaki Tombada, Jason Tomba said, among what she did that, Dushin, the Sungo, Rimba, and the dinner is that a Buddha boy, I did Dandala, and to did Chicken, Simple Chai Meva, Dagangele, Dushin.
So here I want to, again, encourage you to take care of your mind. When you're listening to teachings, listen with wisdom. And this wisdom gets developed over time as you hear more teachings and reflect on the meaning and get to know yourself better. Because a mistake to make with this or any teaching is to think, this is beyond me. This is at a level for the holy beings, not for someone like me, and then give up. This is a mistake. When thoughts like that arise, that this is too difficult, this is beyond me, recognize those thoughts. Recognize them. Don't push them away. Recognize them. But recognize them for what they are. And don't be guided by them. They're just thoughts. Rather, be guided by what you have learned in the teachings, which is that we have attained a remarkable, that we all have a remarkable human potential. A potential that is far greater than what we are experiencing right now. We have the potential to develop far beyond where we are right now. Have that as your guide, not your doubts, not your self-limiting thoughts, not the views that you've accepted about yourself that keep you small and limited. Rather, recall your remarkable human potential. And then join that with faith in the Buddha. Faith in the Buddha that he taught the Dharma in a way that is ideal for human beings, that is in accordance with the ability of human beings. And therefore, I can achieve so much more than I may feel I'm capable of. My true potential is hidden from me. So don't be guided by one's, the darkness of ignorance, but rather be guided by the light of wisdom, through recalling one's remarkable human potential and faith that the Buddha taught in accordance with one's capacity. And when one's mind goes in that direction of recalling our potential as well as faith in the Buddha, then one's mind is uplifted. And then turn your mind to the goal which is freedom from the sufferings of samsara, the goal of having a state of mind that is always at peace, that is always at ease, that can deal successfully with life's challenges without ever being overwhelmed by them, and moreover, can be of great benefit to others. That is possible. It is not beyond any of us. So now, just thinking like that, immediately confidence arises within us, not believing our self-limiting views and opinions. And an illustration of this is those who have taken on the vows, the responsibility of the vows of the ordained. They would have come to that point. They didn't enter in the Dharma as an ordained person. Rather, they would have progressed to that point, hearing teachings, giving rise to aspiration, thereafter taking one-day vows, seeing that they can abide in the one-day vows with a sense of ease and freedom. And then, with that confidence, they would have taken lay vows, and again seen that the lay vows give them freedom, not restrictions. And this would have led to a more confidence, and as they heard more teachings, led to the confidence that, yes, I too can receive the vows of the ordained and live within them with a sense of freedom. So this is just an illustration, but it shows the approach of progression. And the approach of progression is what should guide us, not our feelings of limitation, nor feelings of complacency. Rather, we should rely on our incredible human potential and our faith in the Buddha. And in this way, we're not going to be swayed by delusion, but rather will be guided by our wisdom.
Nenden nyamso langba la ne tsuyu dushe gyeba, dishin shaba la giwa tenbi dushe shaba, chugyu su la rindu nebegi dushe gyeba wo saji.
So let's turn back to the text, and we come to relying on the 6 perceptions. So just this term perception, if you're uncomfortable with it, others translate it as 6 ideas or convictions. So yeah, but this translators use perceptions. This has 6 points: perceiving oneself as a patient, perceiving the one expounding the Dharma as a doctor, perceiving the instructions as medicine, perceiving persistent practice as the cure, perceiving the Tathagata as an exalted being, and generating the wish for the Dharma tradition to last long.
Da rang la neba debi dushe sider soso rang neba nashi yin sembege da dukhchine dushe kye gore che neba da go dushe da neba sider da soso rang neba debi dushe sider da nga ne de ya chidang nga jigdi me che zu bo da de ne ne na za se ne shiro da chugyu to ne she ne di ne ma se nga ju nyom mo be ne se da chi za dunga de nyom mo ba de sha she da di mo se de ne re se kar sang anzo la kanga je ya di ro chi za de ne gen za sosuke that danga never maringa thada yunga never listen to shane yawmina sambe den wadi marwa then is never the so never nashim lube ne nane subola nasa yuna so kanga yungorwa makibo yungorwa di nashi da so ya so bu thana ine danga le nyomo ba de sha khonra la so ba dini gyo ba za ndigi ngazulia ne dige kanga te dio cheza den za so never nashi sibege dene dushisha then che ma wala member de dushi da che shiga lamati member na shiris membegi da men je ne de ba se ne de ma shiwa chi ba yinza dina shin da membege member na shi la mi nga le ya nyamle rimba ti de je ne ngi nyomo ba ti se tu do go res che da member de dushi se je du sung do.
Take an overview of these, perceiving oneself as a patient. So generally, when one hears the word patient, immediately physical illness arises, or the thought, the connection is made with physical illness. Here, it refers to the afflictions. And the reason why the afflictions are likened to an illness is because just like an illness leads to suffering, our afflictions lead to all our problems, suffering, and difficulties. This needs to be recognized. Just like a physical illness, we recognize how it causes us harm, how it limits our ability to engage. We need to recognize the role the afflictions play in our life. that both that they are the source of our own problems and difficulties, but they also limit us in terms of our capacity to be of benefit, our capacity to give of ourselves. So here, the illness that is referred to is the illness of the afflictions. And the second perception is relating to the one expounding the Dharma as being like a doctor. So just like when one recognizes that one is ill, one goes to see a skilled doctor. Here too, when recognizing the illness caused by our afflictions, or that our afflictions are illness, we will go to someone that we recognize has greater skill than we do in this regard. We also recognize the compassion with which he will care for us.
Jesu Dimba Lamrim Dushi Kieva, Sidda Lamrim Ma Chu Soyaki, Yamle Rimba Soyati, the men Nashiri, Sebi Dushiki Hore, just not that Karisane, Nanzuki, Nebachine, maybe men the Pasai, the Nedi, Drew to Gorba, Dinashin Lamigi, Anzu Dunga Segi, Tablam, Yamle Rimba, Din Shepati, or Dingin Yams Lembalina, and the Yams Limbatine, me, and the Yomo Benet, Dungatiki Pas Segri, and which is a men Nashiri. Lamrim Shu Soyaki, Yamli Rimbatiadi, Soyatida, Tembadi, the men Nashires, casting in Yomo Bendigo Sawachi Chores, Sesh Chores, men Nashires, and Tushiki Chores.
Third perception. Perceiving the instructions as medicine. So here, relating to the spiritual instructions that one receives from the Dharma as medicine, in that one needs to recognize that the spiritual instructions, they have the capacity to heal us. So this is the approach to take to the teachings, recognizing that the words of the Dharma, if integrated, they have the power to heal us.
And the men Najir, that Nenden Yamso Langbala, near to Dushikeva, Casorzene, Chisade, San Lamigi, Anzu main the dish, the main the Nenden Yamsolabas, and the Mutu Shako, chicken, yes, main big Sheva Nash Savana, near the Trogor was Dina Shinda, Lamigi, Anzulia, Dungase, and Digutu, Tablam, Damwa Tempaji, men Nashire, Chisandi men Nashin, the Ding Anzuki, Yamsolaba, and Nenden, the Bezu Cheche, Nenden said Bezu Tundu Cheche, Yamsolaba ina, and then Yamsolabe, near Tui Duchesse, Rangi Yomo Be, ne, Tiki Pat, Chige, Bangje, and Toa said, Sosugu, and Digi Toa. And
the fourth is perceiving persistent practice as the cure. The cure relates to the Dharma that we're receiving from our spiritual teacher. These spiritual instructions are the cure for our suffering. But merely hearing them is insufficient. So we recognize that the Dharma is the medicine, but the medicine needs to be taken. And it needs to be taken consistently. And it needs to be taken with vigor and with effort. The key point that's being made in the fourth perception is that we need to repeatedly, over a sustained period, apply the teachings to our mind. Hear the teachings, reflect on their meaning in both formal practice and when going about our daily life. Those teachings should be influencing our daily life. This is how we engage in the teachings repeatedly over a sustained period. This is persistent practice.
That is Shaba like you would be to Shaba, said the Dijin Shaba, then give what them be to Shabas. Dijin Shaba said that Sangi Sungurua, San Yojim Nede, Tangan give what them be to Shaba. Give what them be to Shela, that Dijin Shaba said the Anzunashin Jige Mahimba, and then Nyomoba, Bashada Jeba, Bangba, Shiji, and the Jin. Nisu Chasang Kendova, Kemba, Tarchemba, Givu Damba, said the Anzuki, Namling Chikinki, Givu Mumbu, Nani, Damba, let the Choto Yubas, you're on the Choto Yubat, say you do that, Nyomoba, Bacha, the Chepa, Pompe, Bangbata, and the Shiju, and then near Tamji, Kempi, Givu Damba, that Sangi, Givu Damba, Dile Labas, me, Sambegi, that Lucine, Dushi, some Tangore, etc.
And the fifth perception is perceiving the Tathagata as an exalted being. The Tathagata here refers to the founder teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. And being an exalted being, the reason for being an exalted being is he has completely abandoned afflictions together with their seeds and their imprints. So we recognize the incredible qualities that he has attained through his persistent practice.
다 chigi tsula rindu nebi ki dushi keba o sedo da chigi tsula rindu nebi dushi keba sedo dene ki ane nga zuge deji memba tabo rang neba tabo chile memba tabo lami ki ane men tabo nga zu chwe ba she di sosu ki nyamlen che chizi nyamlen che ba la dene sosu ki nyamlen che ne nyamlen gyula ki dene ki sosu ki nyamlen che gyula ki ne na rangi ya nyamlen che ba de shan la ten che ane shan la ya nyamlen rinpa ki tu chine ane chigi nyamlen ki rinpa di pa rindu ne tuya ki tu samdang gore ese chigi tsula rindu ne bi tu shi keba dine ki nyamlen che pa na sosu ki nyamlen che sosu ki nyane shan la ten shan di ki ya nyamlen che ne dunga zhuwa tang desu ki ya shan la ten tu chine rinpa di ma ten che ne dine chigi tsuyu si du nga zuki dunga se ya tang digi dhubi ki tabla nyamlen ki rinpa di pa yun ringbu an semchen tamche sang ma yi ki pardo ane pando che tuku tuwe ringdu neya ki dine bi duandali ya samdang che chi nyamlen che du samdang gore se.
And the sixth perception is generating the wish for the Dharma tradition to last long. This comes about in dependence on valuing the doctor, our teacher, recognizing that his teachings are the medicine for our illness, and through repeatedly over a sustained period, applying his teachings, taking that medication in the prescribed manner, we will have been experiencing the benefits of doing so. Experiencing the benefits through our mind changing, our mind becoming more open and receptive and loving towards others, to being able to deal with life's challenges and difficulties with ever greater ease. Experiencing these benefits, naturally the wish will arise for others who we recognize their suffering and why they are suffering. The wish will arise for them too to receive these benefits. But for them to receive the benefits, they can only do so in a manner similar to how we are, which is to hear the teachings and reflect on them. So therefore, the sincere wish will arise that for the Dharma to abide in the world for a long time, for the methods to attain lasting happiness to abide in the world for a long time.
Adonala da chunyin bi kabla shigurwa da chunyin bi kabla an soso gi da mashin ba nyomo be gi ne gi tab de ba na shi da nyomo ba du shi ne ganga ne di gi ganga de ne nyomo ba de che sa di ma di me ba sue di tablam de su ting gi la na da la mi gi ting gi me ba na shi de men je ne me ba na shi de se bi gi da du shi ne ting gi se bi gi di shi 제가 다템비게 최 냠len 때베 림바 냠len 때데 맨 나시레다스 메인기 사진 네 사와나시 냠len 림바 템바디 소수기 냠len 제파네 네 세투그리 맨 나시레사다 데니기 안지도 다딩이 냠수 렘바이나 다딩안주기 네데기 파 뇽모바티게 빵제 아니 띵기 대화 톱투그리 셈비게 톱투그리에서 이다 두시기 호라서 이시제 호르와 두시기 호라서 나 데니게서도 안 대신 샤바자 데니게 냠len 치에 림바디야 덴바상여 줌네데 고롱을 텐데 제사 대신 샤바세야디 안지 기보 담바 뇽몽 바샤다 제바 빵바 시시네 탐제 캠비게 기보 담바다 덴바 땡긴 데니게 탑라 땡긴 덴바상여 줌네데 코로나신 마도 메자 기보 담바리 해서 제사다 데니게서는 추유슈가 저 냠렌제 소수게 냠렌제 바이나 냠렌제네 냠렌제 바마제 랑게 냠렌제네 샤레야테 셴게 냠렌제네 안도시네 안지게 지샬마 덴제데네 유니고네 셈젠 탐제 상기요고 바마토 예바도 냠렌제 림바제 네제네 데네 용어 쇼와 셈피게 데니게 두시에 삼다지 아주 춘년고리 해서지 온도시도 나라 춘년비 갑리야 두시에 삼다나 데니 땅고리 해서지 두승무도한
So to summarize the six perceptions, through when approaching a teaching situation, because we are in the context of how to listen, when approaching a teaching situation, recognize that we are suffering. Recognize that the reason for my coming here is because there's something wrong. Things are not quite right. And the cause of all my problems and difficulties are the afflictions. This is the starting point, to recognize that we are like a patient, and it is the afflictions that cause all our suffering. And thereafter one recognizes that the teacher, like a skilled doctor, has the qualities required to heal me. Through his wisdom and love and compassion, he will guide me to develop freedom from suffering. But for that to happen, I need to hear teachings. So therefore one needs to listen free of the three faults of a vessel, like we heard before. Listen intently, understanding that these words are practice advice for me. In other words, this is my medicine for my illness. And I need to apply it both now, whilst I'm hearing the teaching. I need to be reflecting on the meaning with a undistracted mind, a single-pointed mind, an attentive mind. I need to be reflecting on it now and in my daily meditation practice and throughout the day. So in other words, repeatedly over a sustained period. Only through intense practice will the medical treatment produce the desired result, the attainment of lasting happiness. So this is how we should approach the teachings, and moreover, we should do so with the recognition that Buddha Shakyamuni is a holy being, which means approaching with respect, with faith, and with an open, receptive attitude, knowing that his teachings are a complete and unmistaken method to attain freedom from suffering. And as we start to experience the benefits, naturally in dependence on this, the wish will arise within us. May others also receive these benefits. So here we generate the wish. May the Buddha Dharma remain in the world until each and every sentient being has attained their own enlightenment.
Another nyingbo de nga jigi chyenyen be kabla samla ta de shungorwa jesa samla de kabla jigi ma jigi nga jigi chue shuwe kabla ya jigi ma jigi sem kasore namye ma so da ni mo ko wala so ba da du shin ne sabza jine ane shi nye da an de le ya an kun lo to ne lama na chue le ya de ba ji ji du che ne an ji ge de ne shu ya de be ya wo le se de ka shin gu bi to ne du sin yen gu le es an da de yen gu le se je de ne yen gu go se de ga zu sem le ya chi zhuo an de ne ge an ji ge nian bi ka le an ji ge ne ge du shi zhu sam se de ji za da ngan ji ge ngang da be ne le da nyo mo ba ma ba ba ze nyo mo be ne ge tab de yo le ji za ngi de nyo mo ngan ne ba na shi na sim be ge nyo mo be ne de ngi ju le yo le da ji za da chue den bo bo la ma di ngan ji ge nyo mo be ne se ge men ba na shi ya sim be ge da la me ge sun she be chue de me na she re ji za la me zin de chue shu be de chue de ngan zu nyam len je ba na di de la de ne ngan ji ge nyo mo be du nga de se tu ge es de ne za da de ha ne la me sun ye de ya 상유 쯤는 되게 손셰비게 최대 바 냠레진 바 순고르바 제 상유 쯤는 데세야디 교용 군세 연된 군대 안에게 왔담바 제위 단위 제제 지사 그런 게 냠솔레네 냠용어 토네 손샤바디레 지사다 기보담바디 손샤바디레 아스베게 데니게 냠는 제야데 야고레 지사 데니게 냠는 제레 빼야 가고 소수기 냠내진데 소수기요 대양하는 소소하게 냠내지 말하게 냠내지네 샤리아 대제 데니기 셈젠 동아세야 산지 데니기 냠내진 바도 균류네게 데니기 셈젠 탐제라 판도 용하데 디던다 인세베게 두치네 삼당고레서 제가 최연배 갈라 삼당다 딘시당고레서 제 디순고르바다 데니기 삼다진 연고레서
To summarize what we've been looking at, the attitude to generate, both when approaching a teaching as well as to maintain whilst in the teaching, is to reflect on the great opportunity one has, the rarity of this opportunity, and thereby generate some enthusiasm, generate enthusiasm within oneself, a willingness to hear and to engage. And then moreover, to generate a respect and a trust in the teacher and in the teaching that he is about to give or is giving. This too is to serve to generate joy and enthusiasm in our mind, a wish to understand the entirety of what's being presented, because one understands that whatever the topic is, it serves as part of helping us to overcome the afflictions that cause our pain and developing virtue, which will lead us to freedom from suffering. So we use these techniques that we've been hearing last night and today to generate a joy and an enthusiasm for the teachings, because this will help us to overcome distractions. It will help us overcome fatigue. It will also help us to retain better what we are hearing, so thereby overcome the three faults of a vessel. And moreover, to aid us in how skillfully we engage in the teaching, have the attitude, the recognition that this is a teaching directly for me, because I am here suffering due to my afflictions. I am a patient. I am experiencing pain, and the cause of my afflictions. And the solution is that what the teacher before me, with his wisdom and his compassion, is imparting now. These instructions are my medicine, and I need to apply these teachings right now and from right now. And I need to do so intently, repeatedly, over a sustained period. This is the way I've been repeatedly advised to train, and this is the unmistaken method to transform our mind, to break our habituation to afflicted ways of thinking, and strengthen our habituation to wholesome ways of thinking. And this entire body of teachings came from Buddha Shakyamuni, a being who perfected himself and thereby was able to present a complete and unmistaken path to attain the same enlightened state that he did. Thinking like this generates respect for the Buddha, and this again is important because it serves to further make us receptive to the Dharma, to the teachings. And whatever benefit one is experiencing, both now and over a course of time, will lead one to appreciate the teachings ever more. Lead one to appreciate the teachings ever more, value them ever more, and a yearning will arise within one. May others come to experience this too. And for others to experience it, they need to still cultivate many causes, so it may take some time. Therefore, may the teachings abide in our world continuously without interruption until each and every being attains enlightenment. So thank you. We can conclude there for this morning, but if you have some questions, then feel free to ask. Sepal?
I have a question about the point Geshe was making last night, different from the translation, that the Guru is Buddha as opposed to the Guru resembles a Buddha, is like a Buddha. So then Geshe said, we can have doubt, like, obviously there are teachers that are Buddha and are not Buddha. So in Geshe was saying that it's very clear in the teachings that there's more merit if you see the teacher as the Buddha. Is it that the Buddha has many, many ways to guide, and if you see the Guru as Buddha, you get the benefit of Buddha guiding you, where there's some obstacle, you don't have to think about or decide whether the Guru is Buddha or not, which you have no way to tell anyway. But it becomes irrelevant because if you think the Guru is Buddha, Buddha is guiding you. Do you see that? Is that? Yeah. I just still don't, because it's sort of like, it's almost like the doubt remains. Yes. and I just want more merit, so I see the Guru as Buddha.
So just to confirm with you, I won't repeat everything you said, but just the the question itself to repeat back to you. So one should understand that the Buddha will guide in many different ways in accordance with being's abilities, etc. So therefore one doesn't need to give any thought as to whether he is a Buddha or not, but be receptive to the mode of guidance that is being received. Is it something like that?
Well, it's almost like we should see it as irrelevant to need to decide whether the Guru is Buddha or not. Because we can have confidence that Buddha is guiding me if we stop the obstacle of doubt whether the Guru is Buddha or not.
So if we remove this doubt of thinking whether the Guru is Buddha or not, then the Buddha will be able to guide us more easily through the Lama.
Yeah, with the confidence that Guru can guide me if I remove that obstacle.
Okay.
Dene nazo lama sangi yin de adop nazo sankare kom sangi nanchis samapanga dene nazo bachi sekule unis sangi yin nazo sankare dene nazo doka kirgi ore yini nazo doka de chele da kom sangi yin sankares dene sangi zo sangi na konso tapam dra mit der nagiares gasen nazo sender kam dramida Dene nazo lama sangi yin pa kelen jene dene kum sangi yin amene di kolme dene samatan görkima es dene kum nazo sanke nazo triye pache serbi dene sanke nazo tundewa tri tukine didn't drop out of them.
이래와되네 산지고 주 산지 공회에 삼다베네 대고 소속의 산지기 지랍 주고로와 제자들 되고 또 발리고 말하대 제자 진압내다서 셈 주어 주고로와 소속의 냠랭이 진바대 얘기로 받아 진압 주세 뒤로와 라미기 마산유 공회인 삼다tin 마 최시도 라미 최년에 소속의 셈 냠랭이 받은 거 공부도 좋도고로와
So in brief, yes. When one, or by one seeing the Lama as the Buddha, one can receive the blessings of the Buddha. So how to understand then receiving the blessings of the Buddha is that one's mind will be open and receptive to the teachings of the Dhamma, and thereby one will develop the various stages of training in one's mind. In other words, one's mind will change. So to repeat that, by seeing one's teacher as one's Lama as the Buddha, one will receive the blessings of the Buddha, which means one's mind will change, and one's mind will change through being receptive to the teachings and integrating those teachings through practice. So one's practice will be successful, and thereby one's mind will change. And this is then what's meant by receiving the blessings of the Buddha, which one does by being open and receptive which comes about through seeing one's Lama as the Buddha.
Yeah, so it becomes then irrelevant, even though there will be actually teachers who are Buddha and who are not Buddha, it becomes irrelevant, is that right? Like this, it just is totally irrelevant to that.
So whether the teacher is a Buddha or not becomes irrelevant because one receives the blessings of the Buddha.
Sangi yina mina ingani gachen pa mare kasi nazo depa kenchene nazo chinate shuki des. Lama tsama konso sangi mare.
Lama mare snada.
Gachen pa mare kasi nazo depa yana deni nazo sangi kichena shuki des.
제치고 말에 람네 지금 제제 당은 저기 무인내수랑 저기 뭐네 제 산주 공회에 섬지 소수기 삼당당 원에 삼당의 소수고라 산주 공회 차되어 봐다 소수기 남월라 소수기 삼도 공회에 섬이 두지 삼당의 소수기 셈병월라 산주 공회 차되어 봐다 공회 차되어래 제자디기 되고 질랍 중으로 와서네
Then he comes back, you know, maybe he gets him from Mare, because I'm not so dead, but Yana, not so chain up there, shoot it.
Dinner, Lavaji, Tata Chagomare, Sanjungune, in a mine, Cabario Maralabna, Dine, Tata Chagomar, Casuri. Tanga, Jugi Lama dim. Jidang got Sanji in the Mena said, the Lama Dilia, so soon when Chisajo Kumere, Sebu Duji Shad, so soon Walla, Sangiru chatting a Chagore, Sanjunero Chadgore, the Delia, so soon Walla, Sanji Imbachida, Maimba, Niru Chayomare, Chitan so soon some Warlia, the so soon Warlia, Sanjukumera Chadurwada.
I'm reluctant to say that it makes no difference whether one's teacher is a Buddha or not. But from the side of the student, if one, to the extent that one recognizes that one perceives one's teacher as being a Buddha, one will receive the blessings of the Buddha. So, and thereby one's mind will change.
Bene, nga zoe nilam nalia, ni kurje nilam minera so chisosugi trobo ko nibo ta langbo chala so pa tone. Nilam di nega so wenera nilam di ngola wenera chadirwa wenera chadirwa te ni se ta na ta ngone marwa ma de nilam di ni ku ne ni me se nilam ta shi be nega bla so so ge langbo chona langbo chi wenera chadir di ga so nilam ni so korong wenera chadirwa 제가 될 랑보지 이나 많이 디 랑보지 제제디 말해서 wenera 랑보지 wenera 말해서 제요 말다 지구 When Ranang was a shatter, Nilam did Nangolea, when Ranang was a radiator. A dinner to get some not Tavi, Nerablia, Lama di Chique, San Yungway, Sembe, some time, Sosuki, Dini, some time, Sejido, some time, Sosuki, Sambi, Molea, Lama San Yung, they are Chatigorua. Tis that Dinigi, Benegabria, Guru, that Dinishik, Sosuki, David. Sanju kumere sempige denige samdo ngwenera chane denema ane jigyang ji sosugi denige tunjin samlo nala nyubale dene kukorong gene jig ma gishine shesonya yungoro bade de sung kasore ku sung jema se de mango yungoro bade jesan dige geshe de so geshe bare se jesan de nang samdane kudi 지금 되는지 재산 코롱 원에라 상계를 원에 따여도 코롱 원에라 좀 코롱 난거 상주 공원에 차대자 니기 땅 원에라 니기 기시해지 코롱 고해로다 코롱 팬바지 용고로 받아 니로 제거로 받아.
If we take the illustration of a dream, so if we dream of our friends, in our dream, these are our friends. There's no question of are these our friends or not. They are your friends. When you wake up, of course, then it's a dream. But whilst you're in the dream, these are your friends. So similarly, when if we perceive our Lama as being a Buddha, then we will be able to receive the blessings of the Buddha. Maybe a clearer illustration is if we think of how we relate to statues. If we relate to statues as a statue, there is that obstacle from our side, from our perception, that prevents or limits us receiving the benefits or the blessings of the Buddhas through the statue. But if one relates to the statue, knowing that it's been filled correctly and consecrated, thereby one relates to the statue as being the Buddha, one can receive the blessings of the Buddha. And in fact, there are many accounts of beings who have received teachings from statues, because of how they perceive the statue. So in this way, we can see how if one relates to one's Lama, perceives one's Lama as being a Buddha, one would receive the blessings of the Buddha, in the same way as if one perceives a statue as being a Buddha.
Yeah,